Okay, folks, this is a True American podcast. I'm your host. Hey, guys, I got to say this. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your friends so that I can keep doing what I'm doing. And what I mean is to bring on great guests like this. She's a returning guest. Now, I'm not going to say her last name because I butcher it every time. So I just want you and her and everybody else to know I refer to her as Sister Martha because, hey, I only speak Kentucky English. I can get that out. But the last name I butchered to death. People find it hard to believe that my first wife was a South African. So I was pretty good with the Zulu and Setswana. But for some reason, I only speak Kentucky English. I'm sorry. Sis, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Severs. I appreciate it.
And man, I just want to let my listeners know, just like, I've interviewed a lot of people over the years, and some of the most interesting things that come up is before the formal interview. I mean, it's amazing what you can learn in such a short period of time. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, well, this 10, 12-minute interview is not enough. I wish you'd put out a book. I wish we could do something like that, because it's a lot. And people, it's a lot. It's powerful. It's important. And what she's bringing up, I'm not hearing this from the two major candidates. I'm not hearing it. And this is. I mean, there's something wrong with that. Sis, let me start off by saying this. Towards the end of our discussion, before we got started, you had talked about the possibility of your group, your campaign, doing a town hall meeting. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, at the top of the hour, before you and I both forget, my name is Martina Kunnecke, and if folks choose to vote for me in 10 days or less, they should remember not to vote straight party ticket, to skip that choice and then go on and vote for folks individually. And I'm 7th on the ballot for mayors. Mm-hmm. Mr. Severs, it's been so frustrating, the lack of coverage that we've received in the media in general. And there have been times when even some African-American organizations that you would expect to highlight the two black candidates that are in the race, and I'm calling out the Urban League on this, did not invite me or Ms. Licateur to be a part of their panel just a week ago. So, and yet all of these organizations present themselves as being nonpartisan and pushing forth democracy and that sort of thing. But when you exclude some voices, that's a form of voter suppression. Mm-hmm. When you are leaving some folks off the docket that have issues that they could raise, then it's also kind of a form, in this case, of racism, I guess, because are you saying that the two black female candidates are not up to the job or not qualified for the job? The job to be mayor, the requirements are fairly, I think it's like, I don't think you even have to go to college, if I remember correctly, and you have to be 25 years old or something. I'm paraphrasing what I remember. So the thought that two African-American females would not even be invited, especially to an organization that is supposedly advancing issues for the African-American community, is it's pretty shocking. So we're thinking about holding our own town hall because the other form of voter suppression that's going on is that in these town hall or in these debates or forums, the candidates are only given just 3 minutes to respond. And so, they've pushed us into this soundbite mode that doesn't address some of the deep-rooted issues that this community faces. This community's in crisis. But if you go to one of these debates or forums, you'd think, oh, well, it's just a matter of stopping senseless violence, or there's buzzwords that my the major opponents use over and over again. And they don't really have to demonstrate. They have no knowledge of the community they serve. They don't really know how they're going to do these things, they claim.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I just want to say this real quick. If you should decide to do, your campaign decide to do something like a community forum, I really wish that one of the places you'd consider doing it would be at Launch Louisville, here at 816 East Broadway, Launch Louisville. It's a good location, easy to find. Good
that's
parking.
great. I was going to be looking for a location. So,
I can't speak for the owners, but I can say this. I know they would just love it. I know they just jump on all over it. And it's a great place. We've had a lot of great events here, including we had some events here sponsored by the Sickle Cell Association of Kentucky and some other great groups as well. So, but let's get back here and talk about. Now, one thing you had said to me was about the West End TIF. Could you talk to me a little bit more about that? What is that West End TIF? What does TIF stand for? What's their purpose?
TIF stands for Tax Incremental Financing, and it's one of the tax benefits or tax abatement systems that governments will often give major developers to allow them to build what they want. And all over the country, and I can send you some literature on this, all over the country, TIFs are being called into question because essentially at the end of the day, you're taxing the public. And in the case of the West End TIF, which is probably the largest ever passed in this community, the people in the community are being taxed to essentially gentrify their neighborhood and ultimately displace themselves. But it's always painted under a pretty rosy picture. You hear investment. Oh, finally, investment is coming to the West End. And so it's always painted under a very positive light. But again, it's where the elite, or what we call a friend of mine has coined the term, and forgive me if I've used this before, developer supremacy. And so it's a case where developer supremacy reigns once again. And when I say developer, I don't mean the small local developers or, there are, 5 or 6 people that have come together to form a company to buy some houses and rehab. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about large developers who know how to tap public funds. They know how to tap public property. And they know how to make a lot of money at our expense. So the West End TIF in particular is of great concern and should be of great concern to the West End community and really everyone throughout Louisville. That legislation to pass that TIF, it had to go through the state legislature. It was passed 10 minutes before midnight on the last night of the legislature. And although it's represented now as being such a great idea and there was such support, there were many of our legislators who voted against it and questioned why it was being pushed through at the 9th hour like that. One of the folks that voted against it was Attica Scott. There were several others. But yet it was established. And then to make it appear as if this is a benefit for the West End and the West End will have control over it, they appointed the West End Opportunity Partnership. We call it WEOP. And that partnership consisted of groups that have historically been the first at the table whenever there was funding for the West End that came down. So you have entities like the Urban League, and there was some controversy about its participation, and others that Louisville Forward from the city is on that board. So you have the same old vultures, really, who are circling West Louisville for the benefits that this taxing district will bring. And they will give the appearance of public participation by picking a handful of folks from the community to be a community advisory board. But let's face it, they're not going to have much power. And whenever you have the community coming to the table with the powers that be, they're just there for appearances only.
Mm-hmm.
And I know several of those people are great people. They're wonderful people. They're doing their best. But I think we all know what time of day it is regarding the likelihood of them swaying anything that the people behind the scenes already have in mind.
And you mentioned people behind the scenes. Does the one of the major candidates, Greenberg, have a hand in this in any way?
Yes, Mr. Greenberg and a fellow named Steve Poe, who began the organization One West. And yeah, so stick with me for a minute. So One West sprung out of a Bingham's Fellow class that took on the West End as their project one year. And Bingham Fellows, in case you don't know, it has a huge tuition price that can sometimes be waived. But it's literally folks of the so-called elites who come together and problem solve for the rest of the community. So they chose to take care of the West End at one point. And out of that came Mr. Steve Poe, who's a developer who's been problematic all over town. And he, in turn, formed this One West, which folks probably have heard a lot about as well. The co-author, so he was one of the co-authors of the TIF legislation, Steve Poe, and Mr. Greenberg, Craig Greenberg, wrote the legislation and shepherded through the legislature. I guess it was in 2021, perhaps. And so that's problematic on a couple of fronts. First of all, you have developers that have written legislation that's going to benefit them, and they were able to elbow it through our legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come out and say, oh, this is investment in the West End. It's all dressed up, but it's the same old game. These are folks that have figured out a way to exploit the West End.
Right. Well, okay.
On tax dollars.
Yes. And I just want to say to my listeners, folks, only from a candidate like my sister here would you get that kind of information, get that kind of insight and perspective. Because I bet you dollars to donuts, neither one of those major candidates would have brought up what she just brought up.
No. In fact, the group that has been fighting the TIF, the Historic Black Neighborhood Assembly, they've been leading the charge against the TIF for, I guess, a year and a half or more. And I'm so grateful to them because MPP, my organization, Neighborhood Planning and Preservation, which is a metro-wide organization of volunteer community activists, for years we've been calling out these TIFs and how it's a way of taxing the public in a way that we perhaps don't notice, but we certainly notice when it does not produce for the public. So there have been TIFs for the stadium downtown, Yum Arena, TIFs for the 800 building. The last count I had, there was like over 15 TIFs on the city books, and all disingenuously acquired because TIFs, tax incremental financing, is supposed to be for blighted areas. There's like 7 or 8 categories that must be fulfilled, and I think you have to do 3 of them or 2 of them or whatever. But blighted areas, none of these TIFs have really gone for projects that were blighted areas until now, the West End. But we've been very troubled about how TIFs, IRBs, there's a lot of tax benefits that have been concocted to enable the powerful to develop or build what they want to build.
Mm.
And this has been going on forever, and no one ever raised an issue until the assembly has really brought the issue of the TIFs before the public. So now, at a recent meeting that I was at regarding Paristown Point, the old Baptist hospital,
Uh-huh.
one of the participants in the audience stood up and said, is this developer going to get a TIF? I can't tell you how thrilled I was to hear somebody from the public that I had nothing to do with ask that. But that shows to the degree to which the Historic Black Neighborhood Assembly has raised this issue to public awareness.
As I'm sitting here listening to you, and then, you told me, you shared with us some very disappointing information that the Louisville Urban League had a forum, of candidates. And were you invited to that forum?
I was not invited. And the day of the forum, one of our campaign staff said, let's go over there. We're
Right.
She wanted me to cajole and elbow my way in. And similarly, the Louisville Forum, I think we discussed that the last time we spoke, had locked me out, and they wanted to do something along those lines. But I did not want to go that route because I am not a protest candidate. I am a legitimate candidate.
Yes.
And to me, the proof is in the pudding. When the powerful do not want you there, they are going to use these organizations that they have them on like puppets on a string.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make it clear to those organizations, these are the folks that we want to get traction with the public and forget everyone else.
Well, and I'm glad you put it that way, because that you're not a protest candidate, you're a legitimate candidate. I mean, folks, I want to assure you, you can ask her any question about the city of Louisville, and she's going to give you an intelligent response. This is not a protest candidate. If she became mayor of Louisville, I mean, there's no way in the devil she could do a worse job than what your boy Fisher did. I mean, it's just not possible. It's obvious. She has just not, I mean, she's got a firm grasp on all the major issues facing our city. Now, sis, I want to ask you, where is that coming from? What do? Just sit down and read books all day? I mean, where's that coming from?
Well, I have always been kind of a nerdy person. So I have to admit that. And, throughout my life, this situation here, Mr. Sievers, is reminiscent of experiences I've had throughout my life. I remember years ago, I'm a chess player. And years ago, I showed up at I think it used to be called the Louisville Chess Club. I don't know if they still have that, but I showed up there to play chess. And of course, it was back in those days, I'm pretty ancient. Back in those days, I was probably the only woman in the room, if I recall correctly, but certainly the only African-American woman in the room. And so just the looks on their face, I mean, it's like, how'd you get in here? What are you doing? Right. And so that's what this election is like. People, when I show up to the few forums that Greenberg and Durff have shared the stage with me, the reaction is like, how did she get on this stage? Or what, she's bringing up issues that we don't want to talk about. And the reason I know a lot about the city is because of my work with neighborhood planning and preservation. We've advocated for communities all over Metro regarding development, environmental issues, JCPS, just a full range of issues that boil down to what do we need to ensure a high quality of life for the people that call Louisville home.
Yes.
So, I'm not the most informed person, but among my opponents, I would say I'm the only one that can say I've actually worked with people all over the county about a variety of issues. I do not come to the table without some knowledge and skill regarding dissecting documents and understanding how to connect the dots.
Folks, sister, I couldn't agree with you more. We got to wrap up the next couple of minutes here. So first of all, let me say this. This is the True American Podcast, folks. Look, I need you to like, subscribe, donate if possible, because I need to keep bringing on, thinkers like this. Sis, how can we donate to your campaign, and where can we go to get more information about your campaign?
You can go to our Facebook page, which is Kunnecke for Mayor, Kunnecke, the number 4, Mayor. We also have a website under the same name. If folks want to mail a contribution, they can mail it to Kunnecke for Mayor, P.O. Box 53 at 40203 0053. That's a whole lot to remember.
I'll make sure my tech guy puts it up there. But it's really important because, like you said earlier, it's not possible for people to get a real sense of what the candidate's thinking and what the candidate wants to do in a few short sound bites. It's just not possible. Folks, you're going to need to go to her website and get more information where she's coming from. You will not be disappointed. And if she does her campaign, if they do a town forum, be there. You will not be disappointed. She does not fear talking to people. She has no fear of that at all. She wants to sit down and have a good conversation, good back and forth with the public. And, she wants to be transparent. She wants to be, accessible. And I have a lot of respect for that, a tremendous amount of respect for that. Sis, last question. I'm going to have to shut off the interview, but as mayor, do you really think that you can have much of an impact on what's happening with JCPS? I know, a lot of family, a lot of parents concerned about the low quality of education. Kids don't seem to be at the math and reading levels they should be. I mean, do you think as mayor you can really have any type of an impact, positive impact?
I admit on this and other issues, it's going to be hard, but I do think I represent an opportunity to shift the tide towards community-based expectations and outcomes that are pleasing to the community. I'm not sure how much within the office the mayor can do to change the direction of JCPS. However, my administration will really reach out to the public to say, just between you and the mayor's office public, what has been your experience? We're going to reach out to parents, students. We're going to reach out to teachers because teachers are getting a raw deal under the current setup. Otherwise, we would not have had that massive exit. We're going to reach out to the bus drivers. And so that's something that if JCPS does it, it does not publish that data. We will publish that data and we will start asking JCPS some difficult questions that they have to answer. JCPS has a budget larger than the cities.
Wow.
Just think about that.
Mercy.
And they can levy taxes up to a certain point without any pushback from the public. We deserve more than what we're getting from JCPS. My mother was a teacher. I'm a product of old city schools, but I certainly understand parents now who are saying, I want to homeschool. I don't want to expose my children to that system. Right. We can do better as a community, Mr. Sievers, but it has to start with the community demanding more and to stop being bullied by these institutions that are getting our money but are not giving us the services we deserve.
Right. Folks, I'm going to have to end it here, but I want to emphasize something. What the candidate just said, Kunnecke just said, she has experience in doing that. When she's talking about reaching out to the community and organizing folk and informing folk and networking and bringing folk together, she's just not talking off the top of her head. She's done this. She's done this on other issues. She has experience in doing this. Now, I don't know about Greenberg and Deer Roof. I don't know what kind of experience they have in that area, but I'm telling you, sister here, she's got that experience. She's not talking off the top of her head. So I really want to emphasize that to people. And please go to her Facebook page. Please go to her website. And Lord, if she does do a town hall meeting, don't you just go by yourself. You drag somebody else with you, because this is a very, very important campaign. Sister, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us today. And let us know, let me know anyway, if you do if you do a town hall meeting.
I certainly will. And once again, so appreciate your having me on today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.